Wednesday. Word. Wednesday. Word. Wednesday. Word. And we are live. What's going on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube live? It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Wednesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. And if it is Wednesday, you should know what that means. It's time for the Wednesday word. That's Wednesday word. Jumping straight into it. Tonight's topic is step by step. As always, I like to share what I mean by my topic. So what do I mean by the topic step by step? What I mean by the topic step by step is really about having the willingness to trust our own growth processes. And really by trusting that, I guess how we display that we trust that is by attempting to not skip steps that we will need in the future, possibly. So tonight I have 3 tools that I want to share with you when it comes to step by step. 3 tools for the first row. Let's jump straight into it. What is going on, Brother Bruce? Appreciate you jumping right in at the beginning of the show. Tool number 1 when it comes to step by step is be willing. Be willing. It's really that simple. If we're going to have a willingness to trust the growth process, we have to be willing to actually truly trust it. And when I say be willing, for me, what I mean is be willing to take the steps necessary in the directions that the steps are leading you. There's been many times in my life where I've been a part of conversations where people are like, oh, I'm not taking no pay cut. I make, this back. I make $8 an hour, I make $10 an hour, I make $12 an hour, and I'm not going backwards. And that's not to say that you have to discount yourself or that you have to reduce your value when you're following steps. However, what I mean when I say be willing is if the steps are leading you in that direction where, hey, you're going to need to take this step down and pay, be willing to trust that process and allow that process to be what it is. Think about if you were like walking a dog, and this is the process of growth to me. I imagine if I'm walking a dog and the dog is in front of me and it's walking at the pace that I'm walking, it's kind of relatively easy. And some of the steps that we go through in our growth process are like that. They're relatively easy. But then there's times where it feels like the dog is trying to pull you along in the journey. And that's, though you're still going in the right direction, it's not as comfortable as when the dog's walking at the same pace as you. And sometimes our steps are like that. But then there's times where that dang dog stops walking and you walk past the dog and the dog decides, I don't want to go. And you're like trying to bring the dog with you. And the dog is still like, I don't want to go. And then all of a sudden the dog says, you know what, if you want me to go with you, you're going to have to drag me. And I think when I say be willing, that's the space, at least for myself, I can speak for myself. That's the space where I struggle when I feel like I want to go to the next step. I want to go to the next level. I want to live the best life or live my best life. When I get to that space and I feel like I want to make that leap, sometimes the stairs say, hey, no, you need to take these 3 stairs and not just jump over the other 2. And the reason this is an important tool, the willingness to be able to be patient with that, is because just like in trying to drag that dog with you when it's harder, there might be something on the other side that you're missing. You might not be paying attention to what's in front of you because you're looking back at the dog, trying to get it to go where you want it to go. And when we're looking back at our growth, or when we're unwilling to look back at our growth and say, hey, you know what? Though I want to be on step 4, I have to acknowledge that I'm on step 1. And there's some things that I need to learn on steps 2 and 3 before I get to step 4, or I'm going to be inadequately prepared for step 4. And what typically ends up happening when we lack this willingness, and I've experienced this multiple times in my own life, when I've lacked the willingness to be patient and actually move with the process as the process is telling me to move, whether that's up, down, or to the side, what ends up happening is that I get somewhere that I want to be, and then I lose traction and end up falling back down. And sometimes I don't fall back down to the step that I jumped from to get to that step. Sometimes I fall down a few steps beyond that. I experienced that really early in life. I want to say 2003 or 4, where I really experienced where it was like I was on a great track, on a great trajectory. Dog was walking with me at my pace, and then the dog stopped. And I was like, no, I want to force this dog to walk at my pace. Obviously, it wasn't a physical dog, metaphorically a dog. stopped, and I tried to get life to move at a pace that it really wasn't designed to move at for me, because I hadn't learned a lot of things, not only about myself, but life in general. I hadn't learned so many things that when I made that leap, all of a sudden I was inadequately prepared for the things that I faced at that level that I jumped to, and fell back down. And I mean, even just from a financial standpoint, I think I went from maybe like 18, $19 an hour all the way back down to $7.10 an hour. Like, that was what that fall was like. And it took a long time to like recover and rediscipline myself and relearn the things that I needed to learn, not even to just get to the level that I wanted to get back to the level that I was at, that I slipped past and beyond. So really, tool number one about being willing is really important, because it's basically, it determines how much harder we're going to have to work at each level that we get to. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people who will say you can fake it till you make it. Yeah, you might be able to fake it till you make it, or you might only be able to fake it for long enough and not make it, and then have to go back to what you need to learn in order to get to where you want to be. So that's tool number one. Just simply be willing when it comes to step by step. Tool number two, when it comes to step by step, is what I call the gateway to anxiety. Forget what you think it should look like. We spend so much time attempting to make our lives look the way we see it in our mind. And I'm not knocking anybody who like does vision planning or vision boards or manifestation or any. I'm not knocking any of that. But sometimes we spend so much time attempting to paint the picture in our mind that it's hard for us, when we're going on a step-by-step process, to truly envision where we're at in that process and then accept where we're at in the process. Think about it. If you were like if you're baking a cake, when you start off and you pull all these ingredients out that don't look like cake, it can be easy if you're thinking like, okay, I'm going to put this flour together, this sugar together, these eggs, this milk. I'm going to mix this together with some baking soda or baking powder, and I'm going to bake me a cake. If at any point in those instructions you simply stop and say, man, where's this cake at? Guess what? You're going to create frustration. You're going to create anxiety, or even better, if you find out one of the ingredients that you needed is not available because you thought you had it in the pantry or you thought you had it in the fridge and you don't have it. That's going to create panic as well, where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have all this stuff. I already mixed the flour and the milk and I need the eggs. And if I let this sit here too long, the baking soda or the yeast is going to, like, there's so many different things that end up happening. That's because we are so focused on what it looks like right now. If we simply allow ourselves to forget what it looks like, heck, even in the sense of a cake, hey, look, I don't have any eggs. Let me go online and find out what I can use as substitutes. We move ourselves out of our way and are able to sometimes, when we don't have all the steps together, even though we're willing and we don't have all the steps together, we're sometimes able to troubleshoot and problem solve in a way that we can't when we're inundated with frustration, anxiety, and panic. So really, when I say forget what you think it should look like, I'm really saying allow your growth when it's step by step to unfold naturally. Allow who you are evolving to be, to take a natural progression versus just being something that's, oh well, I just want to hurry up and get there. Typically, when we hurry up and arrive at a location, we typically forget something. I do this all the time. If I'm rushing out the door, sometimes I'll forget my cell phone. And if you're like me, you probably do your pat down, check that you have your wallet, your keys, and your phone. And because you're in a rush, you may pat your wallet thinking, hey, that was my phone. And then you get out the door and you realize, oh, that wasn't my phone. That was my wallet. Or worse, vice versa. What typically happens with me is I'll forget my wallet thinking I have it. And it's like, oh man, I don't have it. So allow that growth to naturally reveal itself. Forget what you think it should look like and allow it to show you not only what it can be or what it is, but allow it to show you who you can be and who you have the capabilities to evolving to. We are pretty big on trying not to set our own limits in this house. Like, I try not to set limits on what it is that I can do. I try to just simply, I'm trying to grow intellectually, mentally, financially, spiritually, relationship, everywhere, in every area of my life. I am trying to grow to my maximum. If I set some pre-forecasted idea of our predetermined idea of what that maximum is, there's no way for me to know that that's my maximum or not. And then I'll get there and I might ease it off the gas. Or I did a first row Wednesday word on how we pull our foot off the gas the closer we get to goals. So that's tool number 3 when it comes to step by step. Forget what you think it should look like. Save yourself the trip of anxiety, frustration, and panic, and allow your growth to naturally reveal itself. And then finally, tool number 3 when it comes to step by step is pay attention to the details. This kind of is intertwined with tool number 1. Tool number 2, when we allow ourselves to forget what we think it should look like, we are now putting ourselves in a mental space that we can actually experience what it is. And so when I say pay attention to the details, by doing so, what we do is we learn as much as we possibly can at each step of the way. I think about back when my grandmother was alive, she cooked in the kitchen a lot. She made tons of desserts. One of my favorite desserts she made was a caramel cake. Unfortunately, she didn't have a recipe that she could show me how to make a caramel cake. It wasn't like, here's the instructions, now you know how to make my caramel cake. You had to be in the kitchen and pay attention to the details. You had to be in the kitchen and pay attention to what the consistency of the batter would look like. You had to pay attention to what the consistency of the caramelized sugar would look like. You had to pay attention to the details. And when it comes to living this life that's step by step, and we're trying to grow and we're trying to evolve and we're striving for bigger and greater things in our life, pay attention to the details that are on each and every step. And this is equally important because you don't know what you're going to need from step 1 in step 10. And a lot of times we arrive at step 10 and say, oh, shoot, I forgot. We live in a house that has 3 levels. There's the basement, the middle floor, and then the top floor where the bedrooms are. There's times where I will leave the basement at night to go up to bed, and I'll go up the first flight of stairs, and I'll get up the second flight of the stairs, and I'll say, oh, shoot, I forgot something that is going to require me to go back down 2 flights of stairs to the basement, grab it, and then go back up 2 flights of stairs. And it's not that it's extremely exhausting in the sense of the stairs physically. However, when you mentally have to do that, and I have this thing, I don't know what it's attached to, but I count steps. And I can tell you from the basement to the middle floor, it's 15 steps. From the middle floor to the top floor, it's another 15 steps. So it's 30 steps. So imagine you're trying to take this mental journey of growth and learning these steps along the way. And because you forgot something, by the time you get up to the top step, step 30, you now have to go down 30 steps and up 30 steps. So you've added 60 steps to your journey. And this is why paying attention to the details is so important, because when we rush the process, we create injuries, we create inconveniences, and actually we also can cause damage to our relationships along the way. People can get tired of waiting on you. If you're taking forever to grow because you're not paying attention to the details, think if you were training someone. I'm training you to use this new technology and you're not taking notes. I actually had that happen in business once, where I was training somebody and I was like, hey, do you want to take any notes? And they were like, no, I'm good. And I was like, oh, okay. Who am I to judge? Maybe you have an amazing memory, way better than mine. But then the next time that we were going to training, it was like we had to start all over from the beginning. And it's like, hey, are you going to take notes? Oh, no, I'm good. So by the third time, I was like, hey, look, you need to get a notepad out and take some notes, because it was creating frustration for me. Here I am trying to train you on something and you're not taking notes. So it's like going off into the ether. Every time I give it to you, it goes off into the ether again. And so paying attention to the details at each step, that alleviates. It's almost like taking mental notes of your journey, of the things that you're learning along the way, of the struggles you're having along the way. There's one way that I have learned to strengthen my ability in the areas that I'm weak. It's by being able to recognize and identify that there's a weakness in the first place. If you're rushing through something and good enough, you're not aware enough when you're looking at a step-by-step process. You're not aware that you're making mistakes, unfortunately, until you get to the end. It's no different than baking that cake. If you're rushing through the process and you forget to add baking soda, you're going to have a scone and not a cake. Cakes need something to help them rise. And if you haven't put an agent to help it to activate that chemical process in the baking process, then you're going to end up with this flat cake. And guess what? If you're making the cake for something important, you're going to have to start all over again and do it again. And that's why paying attention to the details when it comes to step-by-step processes in our life and the willingness that we have to grow and evolve and thrive and strive for better, when it comes to that, paying attention to those details are so critical because they save us time. They may feel like in the moment that they take more time. It takes more time to pay attention. It takes more time to be engaged. It takes more time to be involved. But in the long run and in the bigger picture, really what paying attention does is it saves us time because it allows us to become more efficient at each step because we're bringing lessons, instructions, and tools from the previous steps that we've been on. And the bonus tool that I have in regards to step-by-step is that regardless of what direction you're stepping, you can be stepping up, you can be stepping down, you can be stepping left or right, does not matter. The direction of your step doesn't matter. What matters is that you are trusting, and by trusting, I mean willing to follow that process that is in front of you, and try to glean as much as you possibly can from it. So those are the tools that I have for you tonight when it comes to step-by-step. Really quick, I want to go over those again. Tool number one when it comes to step-by-step is be willing. Again, be willing to step in the direction that the process is leading you, and willingness is an indication of your trust in your growth process. Tool number two is forget what it looks like or forget what it should look like. Allow those steps to reveal themselves one after another. Just trying to predict steps can be in any direction, so it's kind of hard to predict where your next step is. Just allow the staircase, I almost forgot the word, allow the staircase to unfold as you take each step. And then tool number three is pay attention to the details. Again, by doing so, it allows you to glean as much information as you possibly can, and take that information with you to new heights and new levels, and also create efficiencies. So as always with the Wednesday Word, there is a story that I think about that kind of resonates with me regarding this particular topic, step by step. And so tonight's story is really about my career and the steps that I've taken in my career. And it goes back to when I was laid off in 2009. I remember in 2009, housing market collapsed and all of a sudden I was without a job. And I remember when I was unemployed and on an unemployment, sitting at home looking for jobs. It took me like 10 months to find a new job. But when I was sitting at home looking for jobs and I started going on my job interviews, and I remember getting an offer for the company that I inevitably started working for. And one of the things that I felt was like, yo, I was making $40,000 a year and I can't afford to go backwards. And so I really wanted to be making $40,000 or more. And I remember when I got the offer for my job, and I think I want to say it came in at like $15 an hour or something like that. And I was a little discouraged because I was just kind of like, yo, this ain't it. But I'm going to need at least 15 an hour. And I did the like actual math and was like, I can't afford to go beyond $15 or lower than $15 an hour, because then I can't afford to pay for daycare and bills in my household. And nobody wants to go to work to just not pay your bills. So, but I remember sitting when I got the call for the offer, and they were like, hey, we want to make you an offer, but we want to offer you $14.50. And it was a moment where I was like, okay, should I just take the job? But I had already done the math and knew I couldn't afford to take the job at $14.50. Only 50-cent difference, but I couldn't afford the 50-cent difference. And I also remember like, man, just mathematically, $15 an hour is around $30,000 a year, whereas I was making over $40,000 a year, and I was like, yo, that's like a over $10,000 pay decrease. However, I was willing to accept the job. And in my willingness to accept the job, one of the things that I had to trust was the process, the step by step process. And I remember in the interview at one point, they were like, well, I think they were maybe concerned that I would take the job and then leave the job when I got a better paying job. And I actually ended up working at the job for 8 years. So that was definitely not the case. But as I grew in the company, what I didn't realize is that though I was taking a step back in pay, I was coming into an organization with all the lessons I had learned in the steps previous to this organization. And so I look at, I was making $40,000 an hour, but I didn't have the level of responsibility that I had at the new organization. And I didn't have necessarily the trajectory for growth at the old organization making $40,000. So had I just simply made the decision to say, hey, look, I was making this much and I'm not willing to take anything less than that. And I was doing this type of work and I'm not willing to go back because I ended up being a customer service representative. I'm not willing to go back to customer service work. I think about the growth that I experienced in 8 years and how not only did I supersede the income that I was making at the previous job, I also was able to move from customer service into analytics. And my career in analytics has been extremely phenomenal. But it's funny because the things that I lean on the most in analytics outside of actual data analysis is really the things that I learned in that 8 year process in that job that I wouldn't have taken had I just said, oh, well, you guys are not paying me the 40 that I'm used to, so I'm not willing to take the job. I learned so much in that job, not only about professionalism and organic growth and organic leadership and servitude in regards to leadership. I learned so much about myself, about who I am, what I stand for, what I will tolerate, what I won't tolerate. I learned so much about myself to where now where I'm at a much higher level in my career when it comes to responsibilities and it comes to workload and it comes to compensation. Um, I'm able to navigate on the step that I'm on now. I'm able to pay attention to the details that I might have ignored had I said, hey, you know what, this CSR stuff isn't for me. I don't really want to go back to working in a call center. And so I share that story and I talk about that because I feel like had I had known the outcome of taking the CSR role, I would have without question, not have had any doubt about it. But the thing is that we can only see the step that we're on in the moment that we're on it. And allowing that process to unfold naturally, allowing myself to take feedback, allowing myself to take criticism, sometimes getting it completely wrong in the workplace, allowing those things to take place put me in a space to where I am today, where even I feel like First Row was birthed out of that particular job or that workplace. The things that I talk about and try to teach and share on First Row originated from a lot of that. From a lot of that originated from that space. And so when I think about overall the step by step process and the willingness that we have, it's the willingness to trust that growth the growth that is in store for our lives is not something that we can naturally predict in and of ourselves. And so we never know what step that we're on and what step that's next that's going to lead us to the next place that we want to be. And the worst thing that we can possibly do is decide that we're going to get off the staircase, not take any steps, and stay stagnant. Because I can guarantee you these steps are an escalator going backwards, which means they're going down. And if you're sitting still on that escalator, you're going back down at the beginning. And each time you decide you're going to pick up your feet and start walking again, you have to start from the bottom. There's been plenty of times in my life where I've had to start from the bottom. Now I'm just trying to stay off of the bottom and continue to grow upwards. Now there might be some times where I fall back a little bit, but you ain't gonna see me standing on an escalator going all the way back down backwards. And in all honesty, when you're going up on an escalator that's going down, it requires more energy and more effort. And so be willing to put forth that effort, be willing to trust the process, and be willing to believe that there is something greater for you at the end of the process. So that's what I got for you guys tonight when it comes to step by step. I definitely appreciate you guys tuning in with me live. for those who are watching live. If you're watching via the replay, I appreciate you tuning in on the replay as well. But as always, the next time that you will be able to catch myself on the first row, and my wonderful coach, Carolyn Michelle, on the first row will be this Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That will be for Carolyn Michelle and Billy Rowe live. I was going to tell you guys the topic, but you just going to have to catch it in social media what the topic is. I can't wait to talk about this topic. Anyway, my shirt is my Christmas shirt. That's what I had today. So you're welcome. It's my cookie baking shirt. Maybe that's why I had so many cooking ideas. I digress. But other than that, then after that, you'll catch me a couple more times. I have, I think, 3 or 4 more Wednesday words before I end this season. I have decided that this year the cadence will be 2 months on, 1 month off, just to keep my own mental sanity and my own self from fatiguing and burning out. But until the next time, if you like this video, share it. If you share it, like it. I'm always happy to engage with you in the live chat. And I'm also happy to engage with you in the comments up to the first 7 days that they are up. After that, I move on to new content. But until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for sitting on the first row.